So, after the absolute devastation of World War I, the world was desperate for a new way to keep the peace. The big idea? A groundbreaking global club, the League of Nations. But its legacy is, well, it's complicated. Was it a noble idea that just didn't work out, or was it fundamentally flawed from the very beginning? Let's get into it.
And really, this is the big question, isn't it? Was this whole ambitious project just destined to fail from day one? Over the next few minutes, we're going to break down all the key evidence so you can build a really solid argument and, decide for yourself. Okay, so here's the plan. First, we'll look at the League's incredible mission and its pretty clever design. Then, we're going to get to the real heart of it all, comparing its powers on paper to the massive cracks in its foundation, which leads us to that one huge empty seat at the table.
Right, let's set the scene. It's 1919. The world is just staggering out of a war that killed millions of people. And there's this overwhelming feeling, this global demand, that this must never, ever happen again. And this quote from US President Woodrow Wilson just perfectly captures that feeling. See, the goal wasn't just to win. It was to create a peace that would actually last. The League of Nations was his grand vision for how to do it. It was born out of this incredible idealism and a really desperate hope for a better world. Now, what's so fascinating, and this is a key point, is that the League's vision was incredibly broad. Its rulebook, called the Covenant, didn't just focus on stopping wars and getting rid of weapons. It also wanted to improve people's lives, their working conditions, and boost global trade. And that was based on a pretty radical idea for the time, that a happier, richer world would also be a more peaceful one.
Ambitious goals, for sure. But how, exactly, was the League supposed to pull all this off? I mean, how would it stop one country from just rolling its tanks into another? Well, the answer was a totally new idea.
And that idea was called collective security. Now, this wasn't about the old, messy system of secret alliances that had helped drag Europe into war back in 1914. Now, instead of a secret, I've got your back, this was a public, global promise of we've all got each other's backs. So here's the bottom line. Collective security meant an attack on one member was an attack on all of them. The entire League would basically act as a global police force. In theory, no aggressor would ever dare to take on the rest of the world combined. It was a powerful, revolutionary concept. But theory is one thing. Practice is something else entirely. So how much real muscle did the League actually have? To figure that out, we've got to put its strengths and its weaknesses right next to each other and see how they stack up. And this right here, this reveals the League's fatal paradox. On one hand, it had some decent tools, like hitting countries with economic sanctions or acting as a referee in disputes. But look at the weaknesses. They were crippling. Think about it. No army of its own meant it had no real teeth. And needing a unanimous vote for any big decision? That meant any single member could bring the whole thing to a grinding halt. It was like a watchdog that couldn't bite and could barely even bark. But let's not be too quick to judge. It's really important to remember that this wasn't some tiny project nobody cared about. 42 countries signed up right at the start. By the 1930s, that number was up to around 60. So there was a real, genuine, widespread belief that this thing could actually work. The willpower was there, at least at first. But all that initial support couldn't hide some massive cracks in the foundation. And the biggest crack of all was the membership. I mean, a world club isn't much of a world club if some of the biggest players don't even bother to show up. Just look at the empty chairs in the early 1920s. Germany, a huge European power, was banned from joining. The new communist Soviet Union was treated like an outcast. And, most devastating of all, the USA, the country whose president came up with the whole idea, refused to join. So you have to ask, how can you be a global authority when 3 of the world's most powerful nations aren't even on the guest list? And it's this last one that we really need to zoom in on. That empty seat with the American flag on it, it wasn't just an embarrassment. Many historians will tell you it was a fatal blow right from the get-go. So why? Why on earth would the United States turn its back on its own creation? The reasons are complicated, but they tell you a whole lot about the world at that time and the massive challenges the League was up against. Okay, so there were basically 4 key reasons pushing America away. First, the League was tied to the Treaty of Versailles, which a lot of Americans hated. Second, businesses were terrified of signing a blank check to pay for Europe's problems. Third, a powerful mood of isolationism was sweeping the nation. And finally, there was this deep suspicion that the League was just a scheme for Britain and France to protect their old empires.
And this idea of isolationism is absolutely crucial to understand. After the horrific number of soldiers who died in World War I, the overwhelming feeling in America was just never again. They wanted to pull back, stay out of Europe's endless quarrels, and just mind their own business. Joining the League felt like a promise to send American boys to fight in every future conflict. And that was a promise they just weren't willing to make.
So what we end up with is this revolutionary idea for world peace, this grand plan for collective security. But from the moment it was born, it was crippled. It didn't have its own army, its rules made it easy to paralyze, and its most powerful potential member refused to even show up to the party. So let's go back to our big question. Was the League of Nations doomed from the start? It had a powerful, noble mission, no doubt about it. But with such fatal flaws baked into its structure, and with the world's most powerful nation refusing to join, you can build a pretty strong case that the answer is yes. The dream was peace, but the machine designed to deliver it was, perhaps tragically, built to fail.